Part 2 of building a championship defense. Let's get right into it. Okay, so moving on to part 2 of building a championship defense. There are two things that we're going to focus on. The first thing is going to be positioning. Where do my players stand when they're guarding the ball or when they're not guarding the ball? So we break this down into pieces from 1-on-1s to 2-on-2s, 3-on-3s, and 4-on-4s. Then we're going to put that all together and try to play a complete possession using all 5 guys. 1-on-1. I think it's important when you talk about your positioning as a defensive player is where are you trying to send the ball? For us, we are a no-middle defense, so we want to position ourselves to where we're forcing towards the sideline and keeping the offensive player outside of the middle.
Okay, so you'll see in this drill, it's just a one-on-one drill, and we're going to do everything we can to not let the offensive player get to the middle of the paint. We want to force him to either side and then wall up and contest the shot. Another focus point for us is if we can eliminate the rest of our defense to have to rotate, we feel we can be very successful defensively. So we do want to add a ton of ball pressure. We want to try to force a tough jumper and be there ready to wall up.
Now, when we progress to a 2-on-2 situation, the biggest thing I want to teach my players is that they have to jump to the ball. Anytime the ball is passed from one player to another, they cannot just stand there. We are a gap defense, so we must sprint into the gap based on where that ball is passed.
So a couple of things here. When the ball is passed, you can see the defender that was guarding the ball is going to get into the gap. The other thing is look at their stance. We're still doing like we did when we were playing one-on-one. We're trying to keep the ball outside of the middle and not create a rotation for the rest of our defense.
Now, when we progress to a 4-on-4 shell, okay, I don't have any clips for the 3-on-3, but when we progress to a 4-on-4, the biggest thing I want us to learn out of our shell defense is how to identify whether we are on the strong side or on the weak side. Now, if I am on the weak side of the defense, I want to be sure that my players are sinking below the ball. So if there is a line drawn from the person with the ball to the person that I am guarding, and there's just a straight line, I want to make sure that my players understand that they are below that line anytime they are on the weak side, and we call that sinking to the ball.
Here you're able to see our weak side defenders starting to load up to the ball. One thing I didn't mention was, yes, we are getting below the basketball, but I'm always one step closer to the ball than I am my man. Now, if I am on the strong side of the ball, I am allowed to be on the line or have my arm above the line. As long as our weak side defenders are below the basketball, they're able to see the ball as well as the man that they are guarding. Here's a great defensive possession where you're able to see our weak side defenders are able to load up to the basketball and also double down and help the helper. Our weak side defenders are never afraid. They believe that if a skip pass happens, they'll be able to close out.
Now that we've talked about positioning, now let's talk about our rotations. Now, we are a no-middle defense. So if one of our players gets beat to the middle, we have to tell them they are on their own. Nobody's coming to help. they need to try to get back in front of that offensive player, wall up, and make a good contest on the shot. However, our biggest rotation in our man-to-man defense is anytime the ball is driven on the baseline. That is going to force our defense to have to rotate. So when the ball is penetrated towards the baseline, we want to make sure the first help defender is ready to fill and stop that penetration. The other defender on the weak side is still sinking towards the ball.
Here we get baseline penetration, which forces a weak side rotation. We get a player filling and a player sinking.
Now, after we fill and sink, if that player is able to skip that pass, whether it's to the baseline corner, the player that was sinking towards the ball must take the first pass, and then the player that filled must take the second pass. And that is our rotation.
If a player on the strong side gets beat towards the baseline, the weak side defenders must fill and sink. The player that sinks below the ball must take the first pass, and the player that fills to stop the penetration must sprint and take the second pass.
So we know our positioning, we know our rotation. Now it's time to put it all together and go out there and compete.
Okay, if you take anything away from this video and you play man-to-man defense, you need to use this drill. I took this drill from the University of St. Thomas when I was able to go and watch them practice. Now, this is your normal shell drill. However, after about 10 to 15 seconds, the defense will regroup and find a new man. That way they are working different levels of the defense and having to use different rotations. After about the third possession, we will go live, and blue will have to get a stop. Once they get a rebound, blue will then push the ball to the other end, forcing white to have to play defense and get a stop. Once blue goes down and forces white to play defense, we will then finish the drill. And then we will restart with white now starting on defense and blue on offense. Now, if you can put all this together, you see that white would have to be ready to play some transition defense. Look out for part 3 of building a championship defense as we discuss transition defense.
I hope you're learning something. If I tell you what, if you're taking time out of your day to watch these videos, success is coming your way. Be on the lookout for part 3, and I appreciate you for watching.